Hello and welcome to this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network. We have two guests today. First guest will be Manny DeBrito. He's a regular now on the the program. There always seems to be an election coming up.
Always something.
Olivia Melo, the Library Director, will be joining us in the second half of the program. But Manny starts us off today. Thanks for coming in.
How you doing, Jim?
Good. It's good to see you again. Another election coming up. It just does not end. For you. So we've got the municipal election. We had a primary in September, and obviously in November 2nd we have the general election. I guess overall your assessment as to how registration's gone for people, interest in the race. It didn't seem like it's been a quiet election season.
Yeah, extremely quiet this year. I don't know if not having the mayor's race has anything to do with that, or people just being kind of politicked out. I think we only had a 6.5% turnout for the Ward 5 preliminary, which is extremely low.
Right.
And Ward 5 comes out to vote. That's usually one of our highest voting wards. So it is a little concerning.
So for the general election on November 2nd, you've got Ward 1, Ward 2,
Nope.
Ward 1, Ward 5, and Ward 6.
Yes, that are opposed.
Those were
yes.
Contested races.
Contested.
At large,
and assessor.
Yes. And now school committee, which isn't.
No. Only 3 candidates came out, and there's 3 available seats. Well, luckily we have 3 good candidates that
right.
Are running. But yeah, we just only had 3. We only had 3 candidates this time around.
And for the for at large, there's 1 open seat, so there'll be somebody new in there.
Yes, 4 incumbents and 1 open seat. 10 candidates came out, which we didn't have enough for a preliminary.
Correct.
That's why we didn't have the citywide preliminary because of that. But yeah, there are 10 candidates.
And I didn't know, and I know Charlene had called you, that it takes 11 to have the primary.
Yes.
Which I didn't know.
It's the number of seats times 2 plus 1. So there's 5 at-large seats.
Yeah.
So 10 plus 1, 11.
And it's surprising that I can't recall a city election where there were 3 ward councilors that are unopposed. I just can't remember that.
And honestly, my staff has been there over 30 years each. They've been there forever, and they've seen a lot of things, and they can't remember ever being a time where there was no preliminary.
Right.
Which is extremely rare. So there was a lot of unplanning to do.
You've talked in the past when you've been on the show, and you've talked about, you get out there, you're encouraging people to vote. What are you hearing from people about perhaps why they don't vote, why they do vote? What are you hearing from people?
I think there's just such a distrust in the process, distrust in government nowadays. It's much easier also to get on your soapbox on Facebook and jump on and comment when you don't like something. And what change is that really bringing about? Other than you getting it off your chest. I mean, actually going out and voting and making changes and voting for folks that you want to see in. They have to pay attention if we're coming out to vote. They have to listen to you, and they're not answering to, if I know I only have to answer to 6.5% of the population because those are my voters.
Right.
I think we prove a lot if we come out in bigger numbers, stronger numbers.
And it fluctuates too. I remember when you were here for the presidential election. I mean, a lot of people voted then, but I would contend that the city election has more of a direct impact on your day-to-day life than, in a sense, a presidential election.
And it does. I mean, everything starts locally. I mean, you're talking about our taxes, our school system. We're talking about all these things that impact us directly. I think presidential obviously is a lot more glitz and glamour to it. It's a 24/7 news cycle, and everybody's so caught up on the presidential stuff and national politics. But local's really where it's at. It's really where it's most important.
How are you looking for, I know the last time you were here we were talking about, and obviously we're still in COVID, you were talking about staffing and you were talking about safety measures. How are things going to look at the polls in November?
So any poll that's a city building, there's mandatory masks. There's a mask mandate in those buildings. So we're strongly recommending folks, bring your own mask. We'll be handing out pens and having people there to sanitize, and all the poll workers will be wearing masks. We're trying to make sure that it is a safe environment. A lot of our poll workers are older folk, so I'm worried about their health and as well as that of the public.
And there's no changes to poll sites for this election?
No changes to poll sites at all, no.
And as far as the election themselves, I know polls open at 7, they close at 8. Talk about the provisional ballots and the absentee ballots.
So we do have absentee ballots available in the office. Folks can come into the office and ask for an absentee, or they can send in an application via the mail. So we have those available. Actually go in front of the council. We're looking to do a day of early voting where people can come in person on a Saturday. We've done it at the main library downtown, and we're hoping to do that again, just to give people a chance to possibly get out on a Saturday if they can't make it to election day. A lot of people do like actually going to the poll and feeling like they're going and voting. So we want to offer that. It's the first time that we're able to offer that for a municipal election.
When you saw that in the presidential election, it seemed that was very successful, very popular. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised at what you received from early voting, whether it be absentee or?
No, I think it just opens up options, and people want options. And I think through COVID, there was a lot of people that were afraid to go out, or kind of hesitant on going out. We really didn't know what was going on, and everyone was kind of worried about that. So it gave another option for them. Again, it was a really secure process. I liked it. Obviously, a lot more work and a lot.
I was going to say, strategy-wise for you, was it? I don't want to say a headache, but was it? It was new. I know that. So was it different? How different was it?
It was very new, and the time frame to get everything up and running was really short. So I think the poll workers we had and my staff handled it really, really well, and again, just a really secure process. And again, it gave folks a chance to make sure they cast their vote.
Do you have numbers as to how many people did participate in that early voting?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I think it's a fairly large number.
Was it really? Yeah.
Fairly large number.
And obviously the safety, when you're talking about the safety, you're talking about the poll workers. I know a lot of people were going in to the general election were concerned about that, and I'm sure it's going to be the same thing. You just got to have those safety measures in place.
Yeah, we just try to handle it as best as possible. And again, people are so used to the masks now and sanitizing and the social distancing. So I think we're in a good place.
We've got about 6 minutes left, and I guess the elephant in the room for everything is when you hear about it is fake election, security of elections. You've been doing this for a while now, and you don't hear any concerns about the safety or the security of the New Bedford elections. I guess overview, you must sit there and just want to pull out your hair when you hear. On one hand, you heard in the presidential election this was the safest election that was ever held, and then you're hearing people say, "Oh." Yeah. Tell us about the process and how safe it is, the safeguards that are in place.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is misinformation that's out there, and people don't understand the process. It's really, really secure. When we tabulate the votes, New Bedford and Massachusetts, for that matter, we have a paper ballot system. So there's always a backup. Mm-hmm. We always have paper ballot. I know in some states they try to go to the touch screen and computer, and there were some questions regarding the safety and security of those. So we don't have that issue in Massachusetts.
Do you like the paper ballot?
I like it. Again, it's outdated in a sense.
I was going to say technology dictates that it is outdated.
But again, we have that backup to prove our numbers. There's a police officer at every location, mm-hmm. and they're washing the machines, and the poll workers do a great job. And when we get the results at the end of the night, we receive the paper roll with a receipt. It looks like a receipt, and then we also receive the computer disks, and we put that into a system that's not tied into any network. No one has access to this but the election office, myself. and then we run the numbers from there, and it's extremely secure. No one's accessing the voter rolls, let's say, but my office.
Well, a candidate can ask for voter rolls.
They can ask, and we provide those.
Right, yeah. But there's nothing they can do with it.
Nothing they can do with it. That's just we're pulling a report to Excel spreadsheet, and I'm sending it off.
Correct,
There's
yeah.
nothing it's just a list of the voters. You can see who's actually voted in different elections. I mean, there's ways to manipulate the data and the stuff that we send out to candidates. There's nothing that they can do. No one can affect
Right, they
the
don't
data.
have access to your physical database.
No.
You give them, like you said, a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and that's
Which is, you've always done that.
always done that. And we can only get clearance through the state. So, I mean, and they've done a good job, too, of updating their procedures and their security. So, even that state system isn't tied into any other network either. So, the state system isn't tied into the city network.
I think the one thing, too, that people don't get is that, and I can only speak from my polling precinct, is that it's, for the most part, it's the same people, the poll workers. And I only know this because you and I have talked about it. I know my mother, when she was a poll worker in Wareham, she was at the same spot every election.
Yeah.
She got to know the voters.
Yes.
Does she know them all? No. Does she know most of them by face? Yeah, and then the name. And it's funny because, I'll go in and the folks will say, hey, so-and-so hasn't come down yet to vote in, in my neighborhood. Let them know.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think, not that that's a security measure, but it is a security measure that they sort of, more often than not, know who the voters are.
Yeah, and a funny story, I go around to all the polling locations on election day, and one of them told my wife, "Oh, your husband hasn't voted yet. He came and he forgot to vote." So she called me and said, "Hey, you better make sure, election commissioner, you better go vote." So they do know, and they take it so seriously.
Yes.
And like you said, they've been doing it forever and ever, and it's they believe it's their civic duty to be doing that, and they look forward to it. A lot of them, it's their social activity,
Yes,
and they
is.
like getting together, and they like being out there in the public and making sure things are run the right way. So I give them a lot of credit.
And the interesting thing, too, is you've had younger folks at the polling places, but you see the older ones mentoring the young ones. This is so-and-so.
Yes.
Yeah. And they'll tell a little story about so-and-so,
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because the younger folks obviously are better with the technology, with the actual ballot machines, and so they help them in that regard, and then vice versa. Like you said, they have that experience, the older poll workers, and they're helping the younger guys. So it's important that they're together.
And when you do the poll workers, I assume that, especially in a city like New Bedford where there's so many polling places, you try to keep the people in the same polling places.
Yes. Yes, unless there's a need. Sadly, we lose people. Again, the poll workers are a little bit older, and people do come and go. Some people, leave or run into health issues or daycare issues, whatever.
Right.
But for the most part, you'll see the same faces.
And that's a good, from your standpoint, that's a good thing.
Definitely a good thing.
We got about 30 seconds left. I just wanted to give you a chance to sort of wrap things up as to what people can expect and some of the things that you want them to know.
November 2nd, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Come out to vote. It's extremely important. Even if your ward, let's say, is unopposed, come out and vote. The councilor at large race is there. Assessor is there. It just shows that you care and that you're into what's happening in the city. If you don't particularly like the candidate, write in the candidate. That's always an option too. I think showing the numbers of people coming out to vote sends a clear message to the people that are in office and hold these positions that, we do care about the city and our voices are going to be heard. And the more people that come out to vote, the louder that is.
Sounds good. It's good seeing you again.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in. That's Manny DeBrito. He is the chair of the Election Commission here in the city of New Bedford. He's got a busy couple of weeks coming up, that's for sure. We'll be right back with more of City Hall Insider. All right, welcome back to City Hall Insider. As promised, this segment of the program is We'll Talk in Libraries. We're going to talk to Olivia Melo. She is the director of the New Bedford Free Public Library. All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Lots going on. Thanks for coming in.
No, thank you for having me, Jim.
The past 18 months, obviously, or so, have been difficult at best. You guys were still, for lack of a better word, open, but sort of drive-by open, if you will. But tell us right now how things are at the library as far as hours and openings and just how things are going.
Sure. Everything's going great. We're right back to where we were back in March with all our full hours of service being open to the public. The main library is open to 64 hours a week, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 9, Friday and Saturday, 9 to 5. All the branches are also opened, and with realignment of staff resources and retirements that we had during the COVID shutdown and hiring of new staff, we were able to realign the resources so that we're now able to open all of the branches an extra day a week. So Lawler is now open on the Wednesdays, which Howland Green and Lawler had been closed on Wednesdays for 15 years. Mm-hmm. They're now opened on the Wednesdays from 9 to 5, and Wilkes is now open on Fridays from 9 to 5. So there's 48 hours of branch service at Howland Green, Lawler, and Wilkes. And the folks are returning. The programming is returning. We're doing hybrid programs now. We have 3 modalities of programming at all our locations. We're doing some in person to a small amount of folks that are venturing out. We're doing some via Zoom, so remotely. And we're doing some that we've actually been able to do as a hybrid, meaning that we offer it via Zoom, but also people are in place, particularly in the children's room. She's been doing some programming where there's been some story time that she's doing in the building, and she's also recording that to make available via Zoom.
You folks were open throughout the whole pandemic, and it was sort of drive-through delivery, if you will, to get the books or whatever you need, and then you had to drop it off, which was obviously a challenge for you. But now
it was. I always said to folks, the building was closed, but the library never was. So we closed on the Tuesday morning, as all city offices did, but all the staff was still there. So we were still taking the phone calls, the emails, and the people at the door wanting to pick up their material, and people wanting to get a library card. They could apply online, come to the door and pick it up. So we've never closed throughout COVID. We just didn't have the public access. So everybody continued to work. And then we slowly started to do, all right, we'll do more of a curbside where it's not just at the door. We'll let you come into our foyers a little bit, because then it was winter and we didn't want to be helping people outside at the door. And then eventually it was, counter help, real quick, brief exchange of here's your materials and leave. And then slowly we started reinstating the seating areas and making the computers available. And then as of October 15th is when we were allowed to open 2 of the branches, Lawler and Wilkes, to public access. We started out with 4 hours of public access to see how it would go. There were no issues from October till the spring. Everything was fine, so we increased it to 8 hours a day. And then by June 15th, then we were given the green light to finish opening up the rest of the branches to full hours of service.
I would imagine now that there are certain aspects of library services that you never thought of before the pandemic, or crying out loud. Everybody's learning different things, but for you, it must be different too. I mean, you were talking off camera about now people using the computers more, but you have less computers because there's less. You have to be spaced out. So there's a lot of things I would imagine now that you're incorporating that you learned over the past 18 months.
Yeah. It's a very interesting time to be in a library now, because everything that we had before, which was working beautifully, right? We were all accustomed to how things were done, is how we've had to pivot and offer services a little differently, as most folks did. All of a sudden, Zoom is part of our world. All the way virtual programming is part of our world now. It has been that we had just initiated a lab area in the library where we had some tables installed where the microfilm used to be. We downsized on the microfilm area, installed some tables. We put in a new router for Wi-Fi access. We put in a projector, ceiling projector, so we could offer classes there. We could offer trainings on, let's say, ancestry. A lot of people are very interested in learning how to use Ancestry now to find their family roots. So we were just about to start all of that, and then we couldn't. But now that we've reopened, that space is being utilized quite often. We're doing the digital instruction on how do you access Ancestry, how do you access different platforms, ebooks, audiobook downloads, even our resources for Hoopla, which is video access. It's like a Netflix, a free Netflix service, let's say. And another big component has been people wanting to use, borrow a laptop and a hotspot to do a job interview, because job interviews are now being conducted virtually.
Right.
And that's been something that's been wonderful to see, that we're able to provide individuals with a space where they could have a professional job interview in the library setting.
Right. And it's funny, I think you've said before too, that even before the pandemic, that the library, the usage of the library had changed because people are in there using the computers looking for jobs and doing resumes and stuff like that. And it's funny that you say now the whole process has been done because they're doing the interviews in there.
Yeah, and what's been interesting to see is that the staff has become so adept at it, because that's what we were doing all along. We were doing these trainings, we were learning, everybody was participating in these teleconference communication, right? There's a training coming down the pipeline. I assigned it to my staff because they were working, so they had to be learning these new techniques. And and the whole and what we're finding too is a lot of people coming in to apply for jobs. There's been a lot of people who have made the decision that maybe the job that they were doing before the pandemic is not what they want to be doing anymore. They're coming in to look at our career resources, what jobs might be something that they're interested in. It's a very different vibe. It's more, I'm finding that it's more of a technology vibe at the library now. But also because a lot of people now have tablets and laptops.
I was going to say,
the demand now for us has been Wi-Fi at the library.
I was going to say, have you seen an increase in and you mentioned audiobooks and the ebooks. Are you finding an increase in the usage of those technologies?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's across all ages. So we also have a platform for children, which is Tumble Books. It's also a platform with picture books that children can access. And the ebook, we increased our collection purchase quite substantially while we were closed, because we have to meet a quota of what we're going to buy in materials. And in order to meet the quota, it was either the hardcover book or it was going to be the digital book.
So you have to make a decision on that, huh?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then this past year, because we weren't having the public access the building to browse and touch the book, we found that we had to up our e-content. We had to buy more audiobooks and more ebooks, because when they were calling us for access to library books, they may not have been able to come in to get the physical book, but we could point them to the resource online.
Right.
And the misconception for folks with ebooks is, well, everything's online now. Well, not necessarily, because the ebook, the publishers control the licenses on the ebook.
Right, you just can't pick
So
it.
you can't, And then what happens is a book might cost the library $30, a physical hardcover book $30, but an ebook will cost $300.
Really?
And that's something that most folk don't understand or know. The publishers are really control it, because they figure it's a license and they're going to loan you that license for 30 borrows, but they're going to charge you $300 for that license.
So if you get an ebook or an audiobook, I guess one or the other, there's only a finite amount of time you get that book, and then it's gone?
Correct.
Wow.
And some that are no longer bestsellers, older titles, or some of the classics are now more than one license, one user. But for some of the bestsellers, like say if you want to hear or read on an ebook reader, the most recent John Grisham, you're going to have to wait just as long as you'd have to wait for the hardcover book.
But then you may not even get it.
Oh, we'll get it.
No, but I'm saying...
But we may not be able to buy 20 copies.
Right, but I'm saying, like, even say you bought a copy or two, that's 30, 60 uses, and then it's gone. You may not even, if you're down in the line.
Yeah. So that's where our materials budget gets eaten up quite a bit.
Right.
So the demand is there for the ebook, the audiobook, and also the hardcover book, always.
I want to ask you, because I know we got 5 minutes left, and I know the mayor's office and folks are very excited about you guys offering the hotspots, as you alluded to earlier. Tell us a little bit about that, where they are, and how they're impacting what you guys do.
Well, the hotspot program came through the Board of Library Commissioners through ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act. It was money that was brought on to us through the Institute of Museum and Library Science. I know I'm throwing a lot of titles out at you, but that's how the money got funneled from the federal government. It went to the Institute of Museum and Library Science, the Board of Library Commissioners, then they reached out to communities who would be interested, and of course, yeah, New Bedford's interested. We'll take 100 hotspots, please. And so that's
Really?
what we
That's
got. We
something
got
you
100 hotspots,
Wow.
and 100 hotspots have been divided at 25 per branch. So the main library has 25, the Wilkes branch has 25, and those are free to be borrowed on a library card. And basically, the hotspot it's free Wi-Fi. It's you get this little black box that you can take home with you, and you can have free internet. It can connect up to 10 devices onto that little hotspot, and at no cost to you. It has to be checked out with a library card. It goes out for 2 weeks. And yeah, at every local branch in New Bedford, there is a hotspot available to be checked out today.
And the interesting thing too, I mean, this is something obviously that's never been offered before, but like you're saying, it's kind of like a book. And
It
that
is.
you just sign it out.
It is. You just check it out with your library card, take it home, connect your phone, your computer, your tablet to it. It can be used for job interviews. It can be used for homework help. It can be used for searching the internet for, or it can be used for telehealth conversations.
That's a good point, yeah. How's
yeah.
the reception been?
It's been great. I mean, we tested it out slowly because we wanted to make sure it worked well.
Yeah.
And it did. And we had the official launch of the hotspots was on September 28th. The Board of Trustees of the library had to approve the policy. They approved it, which basically the policy says that, you get it for 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, if you don't return it, there may be a fine assessed or service will be cut off on it. And it's at no cost to the city because the Board of Library Commissioners, if a hotspot doesn't come back, we just deactivate it and they'll send us another one to replace it.
Is there a
it's
limit?
good for a year. The program's going to run until September 2022.
Is there limitations as to what you can use it for?
Well, it's intended for education.
Right.
So there is a limitation to what you'll be able to access on it.
Okay. And as you said, it's for a year. I mean, but I would assume that this is going to be something that's going to be huge for you folks, and down the road, it's going to be something you want to keep.
It is. It's something that we've been playing around with doing it. We had some hotspots available that we were using for our outreach services when we had our pop-up libraries, our mobile libraries, but we've never actually had enough funding to have them to make available to the public. If this works and people get used to using them, we see how it works, we will certainly invest some of our funding into having hotspots that will be loaned for years to come.
Is it important to have it you said there are 25 in each of the branches, so it's important for you, from your standpoint, to get it out to all parts of the city and not just keep it at the main branch downtown.
Exactly. One thing about New Bedford, we've got 5 branches, but they're all very much community-centric branches. Somebody that will use the Howland Green Library will not drive to the North End. If you're a South End person, you're a South End person, and that's something that we locals here in New Bedford understand what that means. So it was important to me to have the same resources in all 4 pockets of the city, that it's equitable distribution of technology to everybody.
Excellent. Got about a minute to go here. I just want to give you a chance to some of the programs that might be coming up down the road that you're looking at. There's a lot of stuff going on, I know, for you right now, but
yeah, we're trying. One of the things that we're going to try to do at the main library is start to do more in-person programming. Actually, tonight we're going to start to show movies at the main library tonight. Well, which probably by the time this year it'll be done. But throughout the month of October, we're going to be showing movies in conjunction with the art exhibit, at the Art Museum for the Ruth Carter costumes. Tonight we'll be doing Malcolm X. Next Thursday we'll be doing Selma.
So is there a limit to how many people can go in the library to watch the movies?
No, we don't have any limits set. We're hoping to have at least 30.
Well, I didn't know if spacing and stuff was an issue.
The room accommodates 100.
Okay.
So we'll space it out comfortably for everybody. And it is a requirement to wear masks whenever on premises. So that will be a comforting thing to folks, that people will be masked up. So we're hoping to start seeing people come through and start attending our programs, because we've had book club happen already, and we've had our Scrabble group start to meet. Our chess club has started to meet again, and it's great to see some normalcy. Because it's still, the whole fact that we've got the masks and people are not sitting together as close anymore. There's obviously a visual that something has happened, but it'll all balance back.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it very much.
very welcome. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.